Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a wonderful day. As it's the end of the week. You made it. You have done everything that you need to do, and now you get to relax with a bit of Computer America to take you out of your workday. And what a great show we have planned for you, where, of course, in the second part of the show, we have computer and technology news, tons of articles that we really want to cover before the weekend. And, that's a segment dedicated to anything new, anything late breaking, just anything and everything having to do with, gadgets and technology. It's always a lot of fun. Also, be sure to, check out the first part of the show, where we will be talking with a company called Atlantic.net. And we're going to discuss what they do, how they do it, and, conversations like these are always fun. So, but before we get to that, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes, which have a link to our guest's website, as well as any articles, videos, anything like that. We, kind of hoard them all in one place, just so if you want to go back, if you want to check it out, or, you don't hear something clearly, don't worry, we have you covered there at the website. Also, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and be sure to check out the live video stream brought to you by OWC. So with all those being said, why don't we go ahead and just jump right into our interview. So joining us by phone is our guest, and that is Mr. Marty Puranik. He is the founder, CEO, and president of Atlantic.net, and he's here to discuss what they do and, again, how they do it. So Marty, welcome on to Computer America.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So, I guess a little bit of background into Atlantic.net, what it is that they do, and then a little bit of background on yourself. Because how did you, get to the point where you're founding a cloud hosting service?
Sure, it's an interesting story. We started in the mid-'90s as a dial-up internet service provider, and we primarily focused on rural markets in the Southeast. And obviously, as times changed and things grew, we moved on to the hosting side of the business and got involved in the data center space. And then from there, kind of made the leap to cloud computing and seeing that as the next big opportunity. So having been with the company since inception, will be 25 years next year. We've been through, the very, very early days of the internet all the way back to dial-up to today with cloud computing. And it's been quite a ride.
I would say so, from dial-up to where we are now, where, a lot of services and a lot of businesses are, up to a gig, 10 gigs, 10 gigabytes per second. That's night and day. But I guess the infrastructure isn't just about, kind of running these copper lines to people's houses or businesses anymore. It's, kind of like what you said. It's hosting these cloud computing services and cloud storage, things like that. It seems to be almost the biggest obstacle to the expansion of the internet, because we have pretty solid connections going to these places. It's just so much data and so much computing power is needed. I guess obviously that's where you come into play. So why don't we go ahead and talk about just kind of how this is useful to people. Just a clean slate, don't know what cloud computing is or cloud hosting. Why has this become such a powerful tool for businesses and even consumers?
Okay, so traditionally, companies used to buy servers and routers and switches and all kinds of IT equipment, and they used to have a lot of staff to put all the stuff into data centers. And what it turned out happening was that a lot of time was spent just getting these servers and computers and everything operational, because inevitably, as you know, having been in the computer industry, something's always going to break, whether the firmware is bad or you have to patch something, you have to update something, compatibility issues, so on and so forth. So the big leap to the cloud was that, hey, we are going to abstract all that. We're going to present this whole computing infrastructure to end users, whether they're developers or IT managers or whoever runs the IT in your company, that they can go through their computer or even really phone nowadays, and they can turn up servers and other kinds of infrastructure without actually having to order equipment and put it into a data center. So the real advantage of it all is that it makes it much more flexible. You can get the applications you need up much faster, and it just makes it easier to do. And that's important because, kind of alluding to what you said, where, we're moving forward as a society, we need to free up people from, building and putting computers in racks to developing applications and compliance and certifications and all those kinds of things that we really need to be thinking about. So I think that we're kind of at a pivotal time right now because we've got this technology and it's moving so fast. And before, the challenges were technical, kind of like you had mentioned in terms of how the connectivity has sped up from dial up to 10 gigs now. But if you think about it, a lot of the regulations or how are we going to use the technology really haven't kept up. So we see the challenges with data breaches and self-driving cars and this Internet of Things where you have medical devices. It's kind of a whole new frontier, and I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And it's an interesting discussion because it's for us to decide as a society, how are we going to move forward? And of course, there's always AI, which is kind of hot right now. How far are we going to let it go, and how are we going to regulate it so that it doesn't get out of control?
So that is a very interesting conversation that we actually have here on the show quite often, and we never, there's never a clear outcome. Talk about some of the some of the challenges that cloud computing has to come over. Some of the early arguments I heard was that, if you lose internet connection, then, you're losing a lot more than you would if you kind of hosted everything, client side. Or there's also, if you store data in the cloud, you don't know who's reading your data, things like that. So I guess, between usability, security, things like that, just has cloud computing come to a point where, we can't have conversations about, is what we're doing okay, which is, AI, drones, whatever you want to talk about, or are we still working out the kinks of, is it a usable technology?
Well, I think that, it's an interesting question. I would actually say that the data is probably safer in the cloud, and I'll tell you why. Because when it's in a cloud, you kind of aggregate servers, so you have tens of thousands of servers, and you have people dedicated to, let's say, security or keeping up with patches or, whatever needs to happen. Whereas traditionally, kind of in the old world, you'd have these tens of thousands of servers spread across IT closets all over the United States. And you might have one or two servers here and there, and there wouldn't really be anybody designated to keeping those servers up to date. So when you see a lot of like the security breaches or security issues, you'll note that a lot of them happen not because they're using some kind of new, what they call a zero-day exploit or, something that just came out, but it's often bugs that have been known about for a very long time. Just by kind of having a best practice or, keeping up with just even the basics dramatically improves the security posture of a kind of a cloud platform where when it's running on-prem, you may not have somebody designated to do that, or at least looking at it or reminding you or so on and so forth. So in those ways, I think cloud is better. The other thing about cloud that's really, really neat is that you can very easily put your data in 2 or 3 different data centers, so geographically diverse. So when it's in your office, if there's, let's say, a pipe bursts and there's a water leak and it floods your server room, where your data could be lost forever, or even if your backups are in the same room, that's even worse. With the cloud, it's very easy to move your data and put it into different regions, and that kind of gives you another level of added security.
So you spell out, obviously, because you're providing these services, I'm sure that you'd like everyone to realize every single possible positive, kind of benefit to using a system like this. But as we saw with not just small business companies and small medium business that they may find it they feel like they don't need to or some other reason, but large organizations, huge organizations. We saw the National Health Services over in Europe. We saw even companies such as here in the United States, like even government institutions. There's a lot of pushback, and I guess my question is, if there are so many benefits, what is the real hindrance to moving to a system like this? Is it like implementation? These systems may be for banks. Let's say banks have been around since like the 70s or 80s, and it's just too hard. Or is it some kind of apathy? Like, I really don't have to worry about this. I'm going to be okay. What are the main, and just being with your company, what are the main pushbacks that you get from people when you tell them, hey, you should really consider this option?
Yeah, I think the biggest pushback is migrating legacy applications. Sometimes there's, like for example, there's some very old software that needs something called a dongle where you have to put it into the serial or parallel port to make the software work. So something like that wouldn't work very well in the cloud. Or if it runs really, really old software that, is kind of a legacy service. Those are probably more difficult things to move to the cloud. There's also the case of you want to make sure that whatever you're going to move and wherever you're moving to is going to be compliant. So, for example, with healthcare, there's something called HIPAA, which is a set of standards the U.S. government has created that basically communicate all the basics that you need to move if you're going to be putting people's healthcare records into a cloud. So you definitely need to make sure you're certified in that case. And of course, there's ones for the government. So there's FedRAMP or ITAR or whatever else. So I think it's kind of like the known knowns and then the unknown unknowns. Mm-hmm. So people always want to make sure that, hey, we're going to move to the cloud. Is that going to expose us to any other risks that we don't have already? So I think a lot of it is there's just a lot of confusion in terms of what the cloud means. And really, even though I'm a huge cloud proponent, I don't think the cloud is right for all applications. So one of the things I think people get wrong is that they say, hey, we're going to move to the cloud and we're going to save a ton of money. And you may or you may not, but that's not even the best reasons to do it, is that it gives you the agility that if you need to change something or if you need to replicate your environment to another part of the United States, for example, it just gives you a lot of more features and options that you don't have with an on-prem infrastructure. But at the same time, one of the biggest things is that, we talk to companies, they don't want to lay people off. They've got great people. It takes time to find good people.
Right.
And, if they've got those people that are managing the servers and stuff like that. So that's another reason that, you definitely can keep an on-prem infrastructure. Because generally speaking, the people that are going to do cloud are also doing a lot of other things too. So it's an IT department. They don't necessarily say, hey, these people are designated just to the stuff that would go into the cloud. They'd be doing the cloud, and then they're going to, be doing break fix or, updating, patching Windows or whatever needs to happen. So it's really about getting more out of the same team. So I think there's some thought, or maybe people look at it the wrong way and saying, hey, okay, well, we're going to move to the cloud and we're all going to lose our jobs. And while that could happen, hopefully that's not the case. And I actually think there's a bigger opportunity because, like, let's just look at today versus even 10 years ago. Look at the connected devices that everybody's coming in on now, kind of bring your own device, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a PC, of course, and whatever else is going to happen in the future with Internet of Things. So that's a whole new industry in terms of just managing identity that didn't even really exist in earnest in the last 5 years. Probably in the last 5 years, another threat that really kind of took off was ransomware, which was not something most people really worried about. But because of that, business continuity and disaster recovery have become a big thing. So that if something were to happen, people are able to, go to a restore point that keeps their business running. You could just see here in Atlanta right now, they're kind of crippled with their.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're crippled, and they either have to. It's a no-win situation for Atlanta, because if they pay I think it's a $51,000 ransom, then that's bad. And then if they don't pay it, for them to restore all their data is also going to probably cost a lot more than $51,000. So the better answer to that is to avoid getting in that situation in the first place. So this kind of goes back to what I was alluding to, where there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of thinking that has to go on when you're moving to cloud or moving to online environments. whereas in traditional on-prem, you didn't really have to think about that. So while there's a lot of benefits to moving to cloud computing, I can also see, where if people have limited bandwidth or, they're busy doing what they're doing, they may say, this is something we want to table or look at later when we have more time. Because these are things we have to think about we never had to think about before if the server room is behind a firewall that they feel confident in.
Right. And if you have it, if you have your list there in front of you, if not, I can kind of read these off, but you have a number of different options that, personally I've ever heard on site and in the cloud, like, I guess kind of coming from a consumer standpoint, that's really all I know. But you have here cloud hosting, which is in the cloud, private cloud hosting, dedicated cloud, hybrid, dedicated hosting, managed hosting, blah, blah, blah. You have all these different ones. Just real quick, just talk about some of the more important ones, because again, there's everything completely in the cloud and nothing in the cloud. I got this whole thing handled. Why do you offer so many different options?
So it's kind of a best fit for what the customer wants and what the application is and where their thinking is on the environment. So kind of going over the most popular would be public cloud is what as Amazon Web Services or Azure. We have our own public cloud. Kind of like the big infrastructure as a service companies out there. Those would be called public cloud, where it's all on demand. You can go through a interface or a computer application programmer interface, an API, and manipulate it. The second one would be a private cloud, which is something similar, except everything is isolated. So that would be for companies that say, hey, we want the benefits of cloud, but we want it all dedicated to us. We don't want anybody else on the infrastructure. So we know that we have the resources and we don't have to worry about anybody else messing anything up. So that gives them the cloud-like behavior, but without having to share it with anybody else. And then, of course, there's hybrid, which is a mix of the two, where you say, hey, we're going to have, let's say I'm an online retailer. I want to put it all in a private cloud, but during the holiday season or near Christmas, we're going to use some public cloud where we need some on-demand capacity to handle our orders that we'll use temporarily. And then, when the season's over, we'll go back to just our private cloud. So it's kind of mixing or matching depending on the application and what people need.
Right. And, just kind of looking through your website, which, by the way, everyone, if you want to check it out, Atlantic.net, we have a link to it in the show notes. But, just kind of looking through these these are pretty standard for, others that we've talked to and things like this. But I will say that, you offer a couple of, different kinds. I guess my question is, over the past year or two, obviously more things move to the cloud, more things become transparent. What are some trends that you're really looking at, last year or this year? What's growing in terms of cloud computing? Is it that companies really don't want to manage all this kind of infrastructure and more of it's, kind of being pushed off to companies such as yourself? Or is it, that ability to customize where, really fluent IT departments are, trying to mix match and really get the best fit? What's working in cloud and what's not working?
So I think it's kind of a mixture of those. If you think about how you use computing, like I said, from 5 years ago versus today and what we're going to use over the next 5 years, the skill sets of what people need to do are becoming more. There's just more and more stuff going through the IT department in terms of security and auditing and tracking, usage and making sure everything is being used properly. So what's happening in IT departments is they're saying, hey, we want you guys to take over the easy stuff or the low level stuff so we can work on some more of these more complicated objectives. So there's absolutely the case where companies are saying, hey, we want to outsource the infrastructure, the basic management of our servers and the patching and stuff like that. And then we'll work on the applications that run on top of those because they only have so much time in the day. We also typically have a lot more tools in terms of managing or provisioning and things like that they may not have. That makes it easier to manage their workloads. So there's that. I think there's Internet of Things is pretty neat. A lot of devices that are coming online. Once again, things that we need to think about when we're talking about medical devices or so on and so forth, because we obviously don't want to get ransomware on someone's dialysis machine or something, right? Right? That would be
that'd be awful.
So, yeah. So we definitely need to be, concerned about those type of things. There's something else called edge computing, which is kind of emerging, where you're seeing computing being pushed closer and closer to the consumer. So let's say near cell towers where they might use the application on their phones so that the applications run faster and faster, whereas typically the data centers were concentrated in, let's say, 2 or 3 areas in the U.S. You're saying, well, we're talking about sprinkling lots of servers all over the U.S. that are in major markets, so that you have even a more responsive experience when you're on your phone or using an application. So I think those are the big things that are kind of pushing the industry forward today. And of course, most new applications are now being built for mobile phones or the web. So it's not, 20 years ago, you'd buy packaged software and then you'd have to get a server and install it. And now you just purchase the software and a subscription so that you have somebody run it for you. And with that kind of movement, you're seeing more and more companies that are using companies like us on the back end to host their applications.
How much of an importance on what you do is security focused? Because when we talk about security, we always talk that it's the antithesis to ease of use and just being like if something's really easy to get into for your customers, for even for your employees, then it's not very secure. Where at the opposite side, if it's super hard for anyone to use, then it's super secure, but they're just not going to do best practices. So my question is, and obviously there's HIPAA compliant and, there's encryption, things like that. But I see here you have things like DDoS protection, firewalls. How security minded are you in this field?
I think it's always, security is always a balancing act, kind of going back to what you said, which is you want to maintain as much usability as you can while protecting your customers' data. So you obviously can't take a posture where your product becomes unusable, but at the same time, you want to at least protect against all the most obvious ways somebody would come in and hopefully ameliorate most of the traditional threats that are out there, which are really constantly changing. So once again, 5 years ago, ransomware wasn't even a thing. Maybe not even 3 or 4 years ago, but obviously now it's something that people worry about or think about. So there's concerns about data exfiltration, where a hacker gets in, and rather than messing everything up, they're just constantly taking data out of your company. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of new ways to protect against that. There's a lot of new devices. There's a lot of new technologies. So it's just trying to keep up and make sure that you're where you want to be as a company, and obviously at a point where your customer's still able to use your application or your website to, whether they're buying things or executing a program or whatever they're doing, that the usability stays as close as possible to what it would be like without security, but with security.
Right. And, pretty prominently on your website, you have, looks to be Toronto, New York, Orlando, Dallas, San Francisco, London, and soon Ashburn and Singapore, big cities. And of course, seems like you have the United States, pretty well covered. What is the importance of having multiple facilities? Because I would think that, if you needed more cloud storage, you could just, kind of build a wing onto one of your other buildings and throw in more, server racks. Like, why do you have so many different facilities that you're, for customers to choose from?
So it's a good question. There's a number of reasons. One would be compliance. So for example, if we have our data, we have a Toronto data center for customers that may be in Canada, or they need to have North American exposure, but they don't want to have their data inside the US for compliance reasons. In Europe, they have some new rules for like GDPR, which is, different types of, privacy rules and stuff like that. So right now we have a server in London. So if they put their stuff there, then we'll have to comply by those rules. Of course, that may be changing with, with the Brexit. But if that happens, then we'll go into Germany as well. The other thing that people tend to ask for is they want really, really low latency to their end users. And that's really, really important, whether it's for a shopping cart type application, where if it's a retailer, because the longer it takes for a website to load, the more likely somebody is to go away. So typically what people will do is they'll put applications in multiple sites, which gives them not only redundancy, but it improves the performance of their application.
And you're absolutely right. I think, the golden rule is like something like 5 seconds or 7 seconds. If it takes that long to load, they're out of there. They're going somewhere else. So, Yeah, not a lot of patience in the average internet user, but I'm sure I'm guilty of it as well. So all right, so you have all these things. Some of these terms I really don't know. Things like RESTful API, but SSD storage, so you're going to be able to get your data quickly and get it to where it needs to go. I mean, all this being said, and we only have like 5 minutes here left. Let's talk about, kind of the future and the future of, Atlantic.net. What, kind of what are you going to be focusing on? Is it because we've heard a lot about artificial intelligence and essentially not just storing data in the cloud, but actually doing, computations, actually running systems in the cloud for other people. Is that an area that you're looking into?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the infrastructure, so there's AI that's obviously moving very, very rapidly. So I think what you're kind of referring to is big data, where people are looking at large data sets to see if they can find information or
right.
get data out of that data that can be, useful, actionable. And that's another thing that people are definitely doing. Our focus is really helping our customers achieve whatever it is that they want to do. So in different cases, it's different things. If it's a healthcare organization, we make sure that we have a compliant application, it meets all those HIPAA rules that allows them to, let's say, collect patient data. If it's somebody that's, let's say, doing AI, like you had mentioned, making sure putting that together in a way that is going to perform the way they want it to in terms of getting the data they need out of it in a timely manner. Because it's not just about doing the calculations. It's like, how are you going to collect the data? How are you going to sift through the data? How are you going to deliver the data, or if you need to transport it, or, there's other parts to it. And of course, like we talked about in terms of geography. So for example, we're going into Singapore because Asia is one of the hottest markets in terms of growth, because a lot of Asia is still coming online. So what we're seeing is a lot of our customers need to have an Asian presence because that's where some of their newest customers are.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty incredible. Not just Singapore, but also China, of course, and then India is going to be, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, markets as well. So I can completely see why you want to move over there and have a presence. But like we've been saying this entire time, the internet of 10 years ago is, nothing of what it is today. And probably in another 10 years, it'll be even more ethereal and, services such as yourself really powering what we do. So, Marty, I'll let you have kind of the last word here. If people want to find out more, where can they go?
Yeah, if we focus primarily on business customers, and if you need help with your internet hosting or business hosting type strategies, you can visit us at Atlantic.net. There's a contact us form there, which has all our phone numbers and locations that we have. And we look forward to helping, your listeners if they need any help or if they have any questions, feel free to contact us.
All right. Very, very well said. And Marty, I want to thank you for your time. So everyone, once again, Mr. Marty Puranik, he is the founder, CEO, and president of Atlantic.net. And again, Marty, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America.
Thanks so much for having me.
It was our pleasure. Great conversation. And hey, catch you next time.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, so there he goes, and yeah, again, always a fun conversation. I know that a lot of you out there do not run your own Fortune 500 companies. You do not run even large, business IT, sectors. But still, talking with with people such as Marty and talking with companies such as that kind of gives you an idea of the current state of infrastructure. And again, it's just kind of a fun thing to do. So. All right, there's that. And again, very happy to have him on. Now, in the second part of the show, we have computer and technology news. And again, this is a segment dedicated to all things, newsworthy here with computers. And when we come back, we have stories such as a new feature coming out from Facebook where it lets you unsend a message. That's right. So if you ever mistakenly sent the wrong message to the wrong person because you thought you were talking to them, this will give you the option to actually unsend it. We're also going to be revisiting LawyerBot, which is an artificial intelligence that fights parking tickets for you. And we're going to see where that is at the moment. As well as Mount Gox, we're going to talk some about Amazon, some Walmart, some YouTube, and of course some Spotify. So all that and more here on Computer America. So folks, music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with computer and technology news brought to you by OWC. Everyone, stay tuned.
Dish TV is better than cable TV. Why? Because you can save 45% on packages compared to your high-priced cable bill. Wow. Take those giant scissors out and cut the cable and save with Dish TV. Plus, you get a free DVR upgrade to record your favorite shows and free installation. And with Dish Anywhere, you can watch TV for free on your mobile device. Act fast. You can save hundreds of dollars. Does your cable company do that for you? I don't think so. Get all the best TV programming at your fingertips at a fraction of the price of cable TV. So say adios, arrivederci, goodbye to the high cable bill and save up to 45% on Dish TV packages today. These are limited time offers and can change at any time. Call fast.
800-471-5325. 800-471-5325. 800-471-5325. That's 800-471-5325.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here, and we are going to jump into computer and technology news. So if you missed the first part of the program, feel free to head on back to computeramerica.com, where you can find the podcast, which is just the entirety of the program, rebroadcasted wherever podcasts are heard. So, of course, things like iTunes, Google Play Store, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and so many, SoundCloud, so many more, we are available for you right there. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump into it. Computer and technology news brought to you by OWC. All right, let us go ahead and start with this one. So this is currently making pretty big news because, well, preferential treatment is a thing with Facebook, and it would only make sense that the founder and CEO of the company would, of course, be subject to privileges the rest of us aren't. Well, at least not yet. So this coming to us from TechCrunch, and Facebook plans to let everyone unsend messages and will stop Zuckerberg until then. So let me set the stage. Facebook has been in a heap of trouble for a while now. There you go, stage set. The whole thing really seems to be unraveling as people really pick it apart, report on it, and as the average consumer really understands just what Facebook is all about. Well, there's been a common theme, and it's that Facebook loves data, and they try to act unilaterally, where these are the company policies, this is what we stick to, and this is what everyone has to do. And this reporting from TechCrunch last night was that Facebook retracted Facebook messages sent by Mark Zuckerberg and other executives from their recipients' inboxes. So they essentially unsent messages. And they said that that's an ability normal Facebook users don't have. But now Facebook tells, of course, TechCrunch, that they plan to make an Unsend feature available to all users in several months and has already been considering how to build this product. Until the Unsend feature is released for everyone, Facebook said that it won't unsend or retract any more of Zuckerberg's messages. We've seen this with a number of companies where Google now has an unsend feature where if you send an email, it gives you a couple of minutes to essentially unsend the email. It holds it in limbo, and you can pull it back from the brink. We saw another company get in trouble for this. I can remember off the top of my head. It was Reddit. It was the founder, and he actually edited a Reddit comment that someone had left disparaging himself, and he went in behind the scenes, server side, and edited the logs so that by no visible standards. So usually when you edit a Reddit comment, there's an asterisk that means that it was edited. There was nothing there. Essentially, he just went in, changed the comment behind the scenes, and everyone saw the edited comment without any indication that it was such. That's a problem for a number of reasons. Before we go back to the story, let's just kind of carry this thought out, where Reddit comments are kind of linked to social media comments. They have been used in the court of law. They have been used as a way to prove that a defendant had ideations of something violent, or that they had interest in such and such, that they, these comments had been shown in court that they were, thinking of this for a while. And essentially, Reddit comments were used as evidence. Now, if the CEO can go behind the scenes, edit a comment, and say, hey, leave no discernible trace that comment was actually edited, you could take anyone to court if you had the amazing power of Reddit. And of course, this has never been proven that it has been done in court. But if Reddit says that, hey, they made this comment about, violence against a certain group of people, and then they had comments that in the past have been admissible as evidence that you never made, but they edited so that it looked like you from your account had made those comments, well, that is a huge problem. That, that would obviously be fake, and at the same time would be untrackable. Facebook, I feel like, is kind of the same way, where they give certain people powers that the average user doesn't. So we assume a certain kind of level playing field, and then when that isn't the case, you run into a bunch of legal issues. And now, of course, since then, Reddit has, received a lot of backlash from that. They have since, kind of revoked those privileges. But Facebook seems to be going the opposite direction, where when caught red-handed, when Mark Zuckerberg had his messages unsent, from the server side, Facebook now says that, hey, we are going to let people unsend those anytime, anywhere. So they're going to give the option to everyone instead of taking the option away from him. So, and they have a quote here saying, we have discussed this feature several times, and people using our secret message feature and the encrypted version of Messenger have the ability to set a timer and have their messages automatically deleted. We will now be making a broader delete message feature available, and this of course takes some time. And until this feature is ready, we will no longer be deleting any executives' messages. We should have done this sooner, and we're sorry we did not. That phrase, we're sorry, comes up a lot with Facebook lately. But take note that they said, in the meantime, we won't do it. But I'm sure after the feature is available to everyone, or even, in between, just assume that they're lying, yeah, it's going to happen later. It's going to happen again. And they're going to say, oh, it's just a feature of the system. We saw the same argument with Cambridge Analytica, where a lot of their executives from that company had a self-destruct message feature for internal emails, where after you read an email, the email was automatically wiped from the server, no longer accessible by anyone after about an hour. That kept a lot of correspondence secret that probably should have been backed up and saved for legal purposes. But they said it was just a feature of the system. I feel like the same thing is happening here with Facebook. So, with that being said, but tampering with users' inboxes without disclosure has struck many users as a violation of Facebook's power. Many asked why Zuckerberg and other executives had access to functionality not offered to regular users. So yeah, just recapping what we kind of got in there. So, but in the coming months, Facebook will bring either this expiration timer or another way to unsend messages to all Messenger threads. Facebook didn't have details about whether recipients would be notified when a message was unsent and retracted from their inboxes. I can only imagine that, yes, you would have that feature. Whether the feature would apply retroactively to old messages sent before the launch, or whether users would need to designate a message as expiring unsendable before they send it. So obviously a lot of how this would kind of work. So anyways, beyond the dubious ethics of Facebook manipulating users' private messages without consent or disclosure, there's the question of whether or not the unsend feature is good for Facebook at all. It could make users more willing to share vulnerable, sensitive, or confidential professional messages, but it also might make users paranoid that their messages they receive could disappear, leading to anxious screenshotting. Who knows? Either way, Facebook could have announced the plans for the unsend feature at any time, and yet they only chose to disclose the feature after Zuckerberg and executives were caught unsending messages. Just another example of poor communication between the executives of Facebook and the users of Facebook. So, not even surprised at this point. It is to be expected. So, all right. So there's that. Let's see. Here's the interesting one. And here's interesting because we've seen companies that have a terrific platform, a lot of users, and strong ability to retain those users. And then they come out with a hardware solution. Namely, I'm looking at Snapchat, where with those Snap glasses or Snap goggles, whatever the heck they were called, it flubbed spectacularly. And no one wanted a hardware solution for something as simple as Snapchat. Well, turns out that another company is going to be bringing out a piece of hardware that has traditionally only dealt in software. So, kind of anxious to see how this goes because, hey, it could go well, but at the same time, a very popular application doesn't always lead to a very successful hardware solution. So let's take, for instance, Spotify, and this coming to us from The Verge, Chris Welch saying that Spotify's first hardware device might be this music player for your car. And yeah, you can see it here. It's a, screenshot. Pretty darn simple. Clips onto the dashboard. And hey, Spotify in your car. Who would have guessed? Earlier today, Spotify announced that it would be sharing news at an April 24th event where it's unclear whether the company is planning to unveil hardware later in the month, but evidence suggests that Spotify has been working on an in-car controller or even a standalone player for the streaming service that would allow drivers to control music playback with their voice. So, back in February, several Spotify customers reported that they received an offer inside the app for a new device that would come included as part of a $13 a month subscription. And that price would cover both Spotify music service and the device itself if they agreed to a 12-month commitment. So buy for a year, get this device sent to you, quote unquote, free. The device has a circular design with physical buttons for track controls and shuffle, plus an LED running along that shows the track being played. Another user claimed that Spotify showed them a different $14.99 price point and advertised support for Amazon Alexa Assistant. So for some, Spotify detailed built-in 4G mobile data so that the device could function independently of a smartphone. Makes sense. And they said that settings of it basically vanished after February. Still, the number of people who received the messages tells me that the image is legitimate and accidentally sent out far ahead of schedule by Spotify, and that there's nothing to suggest that it would launch at this month's event, however. So probably something closer to, something that they're looking into, but again, it's a matter of, is it kind of worth our effort? Because we saw with Amazon and a lot of the Fire Stick TVs, things like that. We saw with the Snapchat glasses, a lot of places that have good services don't always put out hardware that's necessary or will even turn a profit. So I'm sure that Spotify is looking into all of this. So they said that Spotify has put out job listings for hardware projects, and the company is actively testing voice commands on its smartphone app. Conventional wisdom would point to Spotify building its own speaker in the vein of Apple's HomePod. But the car is a wise focus, where Spotify recently rolled out a native player for the Cadillac vehicle, and they said that it views voice control as an important component to the in-car experience. So, with that being said, maybe Spotify is going to be looking into this. At the same time, though, I'm not sure that this would even be a good option because, it's hard to break into the hardware side when you are strictly software. When you're easy to get, you are going to have to offer something really unique tied with that hardware solution that isn't just your free software side repackaged, because people already have access to that. So, all right. So there's that. Another story I really wanted to cover was the story with Mt. Gox. And if you aren't familiar with Mt. Gox, then cryptocurrency, it's one of the hallmarks of cryptocurrency. And one of the hallmarks of cryptocurrency, and really a hard time for Bitcoin, which was when Mt. Gox was compromised. They saw it as a massive kind of Ponzi scheme, and a lot of Bitcoin was stolen. A lot of people lost their investment. It was just all around a rough time for cryptocurrency. But here we have this from Ars Technica, Cyrus Farivar, saying that Mt. Gox ex-CEO, who may profit from the site's fall, says that he doesn't want this. Because someone who's going to make billions of dollars, the first thing they say is, I really didn't want this to happen. So here we go. And again, we have a link to this in the show notes. But this week, Bitcoin's most despised man subjected himself to the internet equivalent of a den of vipers, which is Reddit. And this was himself, ex-CEO of bankrupt Mt. Gox, Ask Me Anything, which is a pretty popular, thing on Reddit where people go in and, essentially answer any questions whatsoever. So they said that, as Ars wrote in a recent review of a documentary about the CEO and the rise and fall of the Tokyo-based Mt. Gox, the Bitcoin exchange quickly became the world's most popular place to trade. And it was launched in 2010, but by February 2014, the site pulled the plug and filed for bankruptcy. Mt. Gox blamed its huge losses on hackers who pilfered about 850,000 Bitcoin, which would be now worth about $8 billion. That's a lot of cash. So, by taking advantage of a major security flaw, and at the time, Kerpeles became the most hated person in Bitcoin world for letting it happen right under his nose. And now his embezzlement trial in Japan is still ongoing to see if, hey, he actually took the coins himself. And so he acknowledged concerns that he stands to profit from the eventual payouts to creditors, given that the exchange rates for Bitcoin to Japanese yen is fixed at a rate far lower than what they are worth today. Saying that the way bankruptcy law works is that if there are any assets remaining after the creditors have been paid in full, those assets are distributed to shareholders as part of the liquidation. Saying that that's the only way any bankruptcy law can reasonably work. And yet, in this case, it produces an egregious, distasteful outcome in that the shareholders of Mt. Gox would walk away with the value of about 160,000 Bitcoin as a result of what happened. Saying, I don't want this $1 billion. From day one, I never expected to receive anything from this bankruptcy. The fact that today this is a possibility is an aberration, and I believe it is my responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen. I do not want to become instantly rich. I do not ask for forgiveness. I just want to see the end as soon as possible, with everyone receiving their share of what they had on Mt. Gox, so everyone, myself included, can get some closure. Again, big words. If he's being truthful, it's great. But at the same time, when you are looking at $1 billion payday, what happens after you get your money and it is legally yours? That's when those words should either ring true or we realize, hey, he's speaking to an audience. So he concluded by writing that he was forever sorry for everything that's taken place and all of the effects that it has on people. And there you go. So pretty interesting that, again, it was pretty infamous. When Mt. Gox filed for bankruptcy, lots and lots of Bitcoin, people lost a lot of money, people lost a lot of investment, and it was just awful what happened. It was, it was the equivalence of the major bank in the world going under if you were dealing in cryptocurrency. But here we have it, and now he stands to not only lose the business, but still walk away with $1 billion. So, hey, we'll see what actually happens if and when his trial, kind of wraps up, and what happens when he does get his payday. Going to be pretty interesting. All right, so there's that one. Let's bring these two stories a little bit closer to home, and all right, this one's a quickie, not, just a little fluff piece, not a lot to, really get into here. But, all right, so YouTube counts views on videos. And the race for the top spot has been pretty heated for a while. It was Gangnam Style, had first one to like 2 billion views. It was pretty impressive. But a new contender, and there have been a couple videos that have just caught fire and just spread as far as video views go. And one in particular, it's a song, I'm sure you've heard of it by now, Despacito, I think that's how you say it. It's very, very popular, no signs of slowing down, and this video, if you haven't checked it out on YouTube, has about 5 billion views, as in it has over 5 billion views, and is the first standalone video to do that. So very impressive, and yeah, considering that the global population is somewhere around 7.6 or 7.7 billion people, yeah, you can see where having 5 billion views is a pretty big deal. So, hey, it may hit that magical number of, the number of more people in the entire world, or more views than the entire amount of people in the world. But as of this moment, 5 billion views for that song. That's a lot of ad revenue for that one video. But there you have it. All right, so there's that one. And then this next one, definitely want to mention, because this seems to be a trend of not just Walmart, but also Amazon, where it's not just about ordering things online and then getting them delivered to your front door. It's also about getting them delivered to certain places where you then go and pick them up even faster. So if same-day delivery to your doorstep isn't possible, hey, maybe same-day delivery to the store, 5 minutes away is. And Walmart is looking to do that. So Walmart to roll out over 500 more pickup towers in the United States stores this year. So Walmart announced this week that it's going to roll out more than 500 additional pickup towers to its U.S. stores over the course of the year. And they said that the towers, which are like high-tech vending machines, distribute customers' online purchases, were first introduced to nearly 200 stores in 2017. And that the towers are one of the ways that Walmart is taking on Amazon by leveraging its large brick-and-mortar footprint to encourage more sales. Where the company also announced last April a pickup discount on 1 million online-only items if customers opted for store pickup over shipping. So obviously, they're offering a little bit of a discount. They're hoping to get people in stores and then say, hey, while I'm here, I might as well pick up, lunch or dinner or a pair of slacks or a tire, a TV, panini press, swimming pool, potted plant mix, and a pair of shoes. Point is, Walmart sells a lot, but they also want you to come into the store. They don't want to transition as Amazon is currently, which is almost an entirely virtual presence. They want to keep their brick and mortar. So they said that pickup towers ties into the discount program, as they're one of the ways shoppers can retrieve their online purchases faster. And they said that without paying for shipping that could be required for purchases not covered by the free 2-day shipping program, which I think is, just purchase things over $35. Walmart says that more than 500,000 orders have been retrieved through the tower since their introduction. And because the program was successful, Walmart will roll out more than, 500 to about 700 stores by year's end, or about 40% of the U.S. population is going to have access to one of these. So Walmart rival Amazon has also had a locker program in place for some time, and with its acquisition of Whole Foods, it began to use grocery stores as a new location for Amazon lockers, which of course they're hoping to boost visits as well. Walmart pickup towers aren't the only way that the retailer is using its stores as a means of serving shoppers with investment in new technology. It also offers online grocery ordering with same-day curbside pickup and, in some markets, grocery delivery. So, yeah, this is cool. Again, being Computer America, we love technology, and it's pretty easy to see that grocery stores, between Walmart and between Amazon and Whole Foods, and I'm sure many, many other grocery stores, if they hope to keep up, are trying to integrate just how effectively can we use technology to get people what they want and get it faster, cheaper, and more convenient. That's a great race to see. Hopefully it's not a race to the bottom, but rather a race to a very, convenient place. But anyways, there we go. Everyone, music means that we're just about done here. Thank you so much for tuning into Computer America. I am your host, Ben Crossman, and thank you for tuning in all week long to our shows here. Be sure to catch us same time, same place, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, here on the program. And we have another great week of shows lined up for you. And again, if you miss any part of today's, yesterday's, this week's, last month's, any show, check out our podcast, which is available wherever podcasts are heard. And hey, very, very simple. So folks, until next time, have a great weekend, do something fun, and be sure to catch us here bright and early Monday afternoon, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.